are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world.
So today we're going to talk about making good career decisions, which, if I'm not mistaken, was requested by Ed Wilmot, South Carolina. And I was thinking a lot about this, about making good career decisions and how we make them and when we make them. And right now is a time when we're all wondering about our career decisions and the direction of the future, because the future is, I will say, uncertain, to say the least. We've got the political election tomorrow. By the time some of you see this, you will already have voted or know the election outcome. But we've got the political uncertainty. Of course, we've got the coronavirus escalating. We've got all of these things, and a lot of people have been laid off. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people's businesses are being closed down. I'm just stating facts. None of this is complaining, because I want to be real in my answer with you and not say, here's 4 little things you might try. Send out resumes. No, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and it's difficult. So I wanted to answer this question because I got the sense of curiosity and even maybe desperation that some people are having right now when it comes to their future and what they're going to do. So I want you to think about it, and let's talk about today how to make good career decisions. I've made some crazy career decisions. I have to tell you, I was straight out of college. I got a good job selling radio advertising in Columbia, South Carolina. And I worked really, really hard and became, for a while, the top salesperson selling advertising at the radio station. And soon I began to look to bigger markets. That's kind of what happens in radio. And I made the decision to go to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and at the age of 26, I think I made over $72,000, and that was in the 80s. So I was making a lot of money, and then a friend of mine bought a radio station and invited me to come to work for him, not at $72,000 a year, but at 17. At 17. And I took it because I said to myself, I'm young, I'm not married, I can do this. The former was awesome. We had parties. We were the biggest radio station in town. We put on the concerts. I always had free tickets. And then I assumed the management of a radio station in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, the office of which was in a closed down drive-in. Boy, did my life change. Now, I've thought back on that, and I've thought, was that a bad career decision? No, it was not a bad career decision. It was not a bad career decision because, and I wonder sometimes if there's rationalization involved, because it's said that, once we make a decision, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we rationalize that it was a good one. But I see the way my life twists and turned and how I ended up in Seattle a few years later, working for an even bigger radio station and loving working there, and then starting my own little business, and then just the perfection in the craziness. If you look back, I once talked to a woman when I was a minister of a church in Kansas City, and she was like 85, and she said, one thing I've learned, it all makes sense in the rearview mirror. When you're going through it, it seems so difficult, it seems so stressful, but it all makes sense when you look at it in the rearview mirror. In other words, after you have gone through it. I was expecting something having to do with one of my books about 7 or 8 months ago. Something major. Good, very good. And it didn't happen. And when I sort of queried about it, it was kind of like, yeah. So that at first was kind of like, wow, okay. And then I let it go. And here about a week ago, it came full circle and everything worked out great. And immediately I realized that had it happened previously, there were reasons that it would have not been nearly as good a thing. It's kind of amazing how your life works out over time. So I realized I was asked a very direct question. How do you make good career decisions? And I'm beginning by starting off with, don't worry so much about making them. There's part following your heart, and there's also following your head. It's just like everything else in life. It's what feels right, but also, what are you looking for? What have you decided you want? So, let me just be honest with you and share with you some things. And that is that we define ourselves by what we do. Again, I don't want to sweep things under the rug, but we and other people define ourselves by what we do. Whenever I meet people, if I say author, what kind of books do you write? Spiritual motivation, spiritual personal development. They think whatever they think, but they have very clear thoughts in their mind. If they say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a speaker, motivational speaker. They say, oh, what do you speak on? Complaining. Oh. So I struggle with my own identity, I find sometimes, in what I do, because I find that people are going to define us. And here's the point. We have no control over how people define us. The other day, someone asked me to do a JumpStart about how to not be so concerned over what other people think of us. And I neglected to say the one thing I really meant to say. I forget who I stole it from, but I definitely stole it, so steal it from me. You wouldn't worry about what other people think of you if you realized how often they do. You wouldn't worry about what other people think of you if you realized how often they do. People are caught up in their own stuff, in their own minds. Think about it. You think about you. That's what you think about. That's what I think about. That's what people think about. So that gives us a lot more freedom to say to ourselves, what do I want to do? And today it's easier than ever to say, hey, I want to leave my successful doctor practice in Des Moines, Iowa, and move to Key Largo and work at a dive shop. If you were doing that 40 years ago, people would have thought you were crazy. Nowadays, people think you're cool. So this hierarchical structure of employment is vanishing in some ways, and I think that's really, really great. When my daughter was little, I told you one time that she brought home some grades that were not very good, and what we had to do was to explain to her that they were her grades, and the grades she was bringing home were not commensurate with what she said she wanted to do for a living. In other words, there's no way she could do that with those grades. The question then became, what kind of grades do I need to have? And she wanted to be an architect, and then she turned her grades around. But one of the things I shared with her back then was an article I had read in the Wall Street Journal that talked about, no, this was Inc. magazine. They talked about how regardless of what you do for a living has no impact on your happiness. Whatever you do, the surgeon and the garbage collector are often equally happy, and happiness is the most important thing there is. Let me say that again. Happiness is the most important thing there is, because all we have is now, and the enjoyment of now is what's important. Remember, when people say, what do you do for a living? They're saying, what slot can I fit you into? But don't fit yourself into a slot. You can be, I wrote about, I can't think of his name, but he's in my book, Happy Stories. He's one of my favorite characters in this true story. And he and I used to email all the time. And this guy works on construction road crew, and his job is to turn the flag and wave the people. That's all he does every day, right? But what this dude it does is he says that just because there's a windshield between him and them doesn't mean that he's not going to connect with these people. So he literally waves at everybody. He gives them a thumbs up. This was pre-COVID. He would smile, etc. And guess what began to happen? People would go, this is true, go out of their way to get caught in construction just so this guy could smile at them. So he took what some of us would consider to be a miserable and even job that's beneath us, and he made it into a happy experience. How many people take jobs that are considered to be elevated and make them miserable experiences? The choice is up to you. So number one, don't really sweat the choice as much as you would think. Use your head, write down what you think you want. Use your heart. How does it feel once you've made the decision? And yet, remember, you don't have to slot yourself into a position. I remember going into ministry when I told my mom that I was going to do this, or somebody, and they came back with all these statistics. The average minister makes $27,000 a year and has to move their family every 7 years. And at first, I got really worried, and then I decided I'm not going to be average. Once I just made that decision, those stats really didn't mean to me what it meant to this person. So find something that brings you joy, but remember, to enjoy, you've got to bring the joy. Find something that you enjoy, but remember, to enjoy, you've got to bring the joy. When you're finding something you want to do, and I'm presuming that the person that asked this is looking and possibly making a decision, etc. Find something you think you would enjoy, but remember, you've got to bring the joy. There's no joy in jobs. There's joy in people. And I want to set one record straight, because I heard this 30 plus 40 years ago. It's the name of a book. Read the book. I think it's a good book. It's called Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. Now, that was a eye-opening experience to people who felt trapped in their work in the 80s, the 90s, and even in the 70s and before. They felt trapped. You do this and you stay there. And then it was like people began to become entrepreneurs and began to do different things, and this idea of do what you love and the money will follow. Well, I can tell you the truth. Yes, do what you love and the money will follow. Slowly. In drips and drops. You might get rich, but most importantly, you'll feel rich because you're doing what you love. You're doing what brings you happiness. In our culture today, as compared to civilizations in the past, we spend more time working than many civilizations in the past. Now, I'm not talking about the farmers who work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, the pioneers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm saying the people in established communities in Europe thousands of years ago. We feel driven. Are we driven to serve? That's what we need to be driven by. So I'll close this out with a career decision by the number one thing I think you need to consider, and that is it serving people? And literally, it can be serving people like Mike did, working at Starbucks for many years. There's nobility in all professions. Remember that when the Constitution says you are entitled to the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit does not mean chasing after happiness. In the day when the Constitution was written, pursuit meant, what is your job? What is your career? You're entitled to have a career of happiness. Yes, even during this pandemic. Because if now is not the time to rise and stand in the sun, it's the time to be a seed and to soak up as much knowledge and nourishment and moisture as you can, so that when the sun is ready and you can pop up, pop up. You deserve to be happy. So make career decisions that make you happy. And remember, Rarely are you stuck. Today and tomorrow are your last 2 days to vote this year. Please get out and do it. It matters. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more